An extra 5. I don't know what.
Okay. We left off on Samach Testament Days 69b by Sefinta. It's 2 lines up from the wide lines. It has 7 lines or 8 lines from the bottom. We did the Mishnah, and we're a little bit past the Mishnah, 2 lines past. Not on Ayin. I didn't start Ayin. Thank Hashem that we're able to learn Torah every day. Thank you. And it's because of our learning. Shav the Beis Hamikdash. Immediately. We're learning the Nishmas, Avigdol the Bas, Baruch, Binyamin, and Nisan al-Sev ben Betzion. What's for Shlema? When it needs. And for Eliezer. Kedai Getzel Eliezer ben Fegetzifer. Ben Fegetzifer for Shlema. David ben Sarah. David ben Sarah. For Shlema, right? Okay, so it starts like this. Sfinta is a boat. What happens with a boat? I'm a Rav. Rav says, Agra upagra. That means that you can rent out a boat and you can also collect the depreciation or damages for the boat. Now, there's a distinction between a rental and a loan. The rental is that you pay a fee, but you don't take full responsibility. If an accident happens, okay, it was an accident. You're only responsible for the negligent type of accident, which including theft or whatever, but not an absolute accident, not an inus, not a what's your translation, Shalom? Unpreventable circumstance, not for unpreventable circumstances. But for a loan, you're responsible even for unpreventable circumstances, even for an inus. So when you rent out something, you're getting a fee. If that rental would really be a loan, you wouldn't be able to take that fee. You'd have to give the item back. If you take you take the responsibility on the item as if it would be a loan, then the entire value of it, no matter what happens, even if it's an inus, has to be returned. Then basically he gave you value. Return that value plus a fee means interest. So how does it work? How does every rental work? Because you're not taking that sort of responsibility on it as if it's a loan. You're only taking the responsibility of I'm going to use it. I know it could get worth less. Things could happen. Things I'm going to be exempt. So I pay a fee to cover that. But I don't have that full responsibility that it would be if it's a loan. A loan I would have to pay back no matter what, the whole thing. So here, when it comes to a boat, Rab says agru pagra. You have to pay the rental fee, and also the depreciation or the damages. If it gets damaged, you have to pay for that as well, which is like even if it's an accident. Amrulay Rav Kana Rav Asi Rav. It's very common. 2 students of Rav would ask him questions. And often with Rav, we have Shasik Rav. We have Rav is silent, Rav is quiet. It's with Rav Kana Ravasi that you see this. They ask Rav, agra le pagra. If you're paying the rental fee, then you shouldn't be paying for the damages. Pagra, if you're paying for the damages, le agra, you shouldn't be paying for the rental fee. Because if it's a loan, then you're double paying. If it's a loan, then you pay for the damages. It means basically you have to give the full value back. If it's a rental, then you just give a rental fee, and you don't have to pay for the full value. So Shasik Rav is quiet. Amar Rav Sheshis.
Just to avoid ribbis.
Yes, to avoid ribbis. Amar Rav Sheshis says, my time is Shasik Rav. Why was Rav quiet? Leishmiele Haditani doesn't know what it says in a brisa. Af bishamru ein mekabel tzin barsam Yisrael. Av mekabel tzin barsam min anachrim. Okay. This is going to be a Mishnah coming up on the next page that says, remember the iron sheep? Iron sheep was was usually used as property that was brought into a marriage where the husband takes full responsibility to give back the original value to the wife if they're divorced. It's same bars on iron sheep. It means that nothing changes of the value, even if it gets worth more, it gets worth less. The original value has to be returned. It's basically like a loan. So when it says like this, that Rashi actually points out over here, he says the reason why it's called iron sheep is because this was common to do with sheep. What they would do is they would take sheep. One person would give another person sheep to raise or whatever. They would split the profits, but the sheep would have to be returned in their original value. Now, just a slight problem with that is that if you take the sheep as a loan because you have to give back the original value, then you can't give back half the profits. So we discussed this before that what you would need to do is you need to do it differently. You would need to do it a half a deposit, half a loan, half a, and then you pay for the thing. We worked that out. But over here, this Mishnah says, "Ein mekabel same barzim Yisrael." You can't do this with a Jew because that's interest. If you do it directly without any of those tricks, then you're in a situation of interest where you borrowed something, you return it plus profit. But you're allowed to do this from an Andrew. Yeah. Depreciation, not because the coin is worn out, but because of inflation. Yeah. I'm not sure. I'm sure it's in here. I don't know exactly where to find it. Where the
cow gets depreciated most of the money. Like ever since I think they took it off the gold standard,
they always had a concept of inflation,
right? Because of the seasons, the seasonal inflation. There's a lot of stuff on the market. The price is all down, and everything comes in, and things are scarce, and all the prices go up. So they always have that.
But there wasn't like this inflation where we have. My grandmother said I used to buy a bottle of milk for 10 cents. That didn't exist.
Before, people used to pick up pennies. Now that people would think about picking up dollars, how much? Yeah. Major inflations took place when gold started coming in from Spain, the New World. That's much later than this. But there might have been cases like that where they discovered new silver coming in from Africa.
It is.
I mean, that's a general inflation. Something's going on in the whole world.
Okay. So you're allowed to do this same barsel from a non-Jew, but not from a Jew. Aval Amru, but they said, if someone appraises a cow for his friend, he says to him, if I don't return the cow, I'm gonna borrow the cow, I guess. If I don't return it, then its value is 30 dinar. I'll give you 30 dinar. And at the same time, and I'm also going to pay a rental fee of 1 selah per month. You hear what's going on? He's appraising the animal, which that he's going to return. He's going to give that.
Why is he appraising?
In case it doesn't, in case it dies, whatever. So he's going to give back the original value. Which, if that case happens, it's going to be a loan because he got a 30 dinar animal, and he's giving back a 30 dinar guaranteed. He's giving back that, which is basically the way a loan works. But then he's also paying a rental fee at the same time. So there's a problem here. If it's a loan, you can't pay a rental fee. That's interest. The interest is the fee that comes along with the loan. That's interest. So but they were saying that's acceptable.
So in other words, sounds like I could pay a late penalty. borrow money for 30 days, but if I don't pay it back in 30 days, there's a penalty.
Right,
And it
right.
would be it sounds like that's okay.
Yeah, well, it's not exactly. The Gemara is going to explain this, but that by extension, if the way we're understanding it now would be accurate, then by extension that as well. But the Gemara is going to adjust it to say, no, you didn't really get what happened there. So it's not going to be. Oh, and a smach that you're hoping that it's not going to die. That's interesting. Well, it's different. I think it's different than a smach. Well, it goes like this: because he didn't make it, he didn't put it into its value. No, 1 second. Kumar says layasa. He didn't make it into a value. He did. He said it's worth 30 coins. See, what he said was like this. He says that if it dies, then I'm going to pay for the whole thing. But if it doesn't die, then I'm not paying for it. I'm just going to give it back to you, even if it's worth less. And then the rental fee makes sense. So, but what happens if it does die? I guess you would have to pay it. Then you would have to pay it together. It sounds like it's tzadachad beribis.
He would have been like a renter, and if the cow dies, he has
He's exempt.
Yeah, like if he's using the cow correctly.
Using the cow regularly and it dies while it's working, it's for sure exempt. Even if he's a borrower, is exempt. But even if it just dies, if it just dies, that's considered an inus. Just an inus, it dies. So then he's exempt. Only a borrower would be chayav. Here he's accepting to pay for that. But the only thing is, he's not accepting to pay for the depreciation of it. In the regular case where he's going to return it, the rental fee is going to cover that depreciation, which is basically a regular rental. It's really a regular rental. There's just one clause in here that if it dies. So in other words, if it would be a real loan, so then he would have to pay for the depreciation no matter what. Even if it doesn't die, even if it's alive. But he's not doing that. He's saying only if it dies, he has that extra. Okay. So Amar Rav Papa says, you see, what Rav Sheshas did here is he said, I have a source for Rav, for what Rav said about the boat. Because at the boat, you took a rental fee and you also took the damage. So Amar Rav Papa says, Hilchas ad halacha sfina agro pagra. When it comes to the boat, yeah, you pay the rental fee, then you also pay for the damages. But not, that's only if it breaks. That's only if it dies. But not for regular depreciation of it.
Or wear and tear.
Not for wear and tear. Minago b'nei kufra, the sailors are called b'nei kufra because apparently they would put this tar on their boats. Kufra means tar. So agra b'shas mashicha, they pay for the rental fee immediately when they take the boat. Agra, they pay for the damages b'shas shvira when it breaks, if it breaks. The Gemara says, is this like a custom that you just said? You started with nagu, that they're accustomed to do this? Is that how things work? You have a custom? Someone came to shul, it was Tisha B'Av. So it was mincha time, so they didn't put on tefillin. We wear tefillin, mincha. He told me, no, my custom is not. I said, when did you put on tefillin? He said, no, that's my custom. I guess he didn't remember what his father did. So, is that how it works? You just decide what your custom is? It says, no, mishum de masnisa tanya minhaga. Because it was taught in a brisa that this is acceptable, so then they accustom themselves based on that brisa. Custom is supposed to have a support for it, from that it's acceptable. Amar Ravanan Amar Shmuel. Ravanan says in the name of Shmuel, money that belongs to minor orphans, you're allowed to lend it with interest. Amar Rav Nachman. Nachman says because they're orphans, so you feed them prohibited food. This is taking advantage. You can't just pay them interest. That's the biblical prohibition. So yasmi da'achli delav too. If this is from Nachman adding in, if the orphans are going to eat things that's not theirs, which means it's not halachically acceptable. Leisel basar shavkayo. They're going to follow the deceased. That means they're why the orphans, someone passed away, so they're going to end up passing away too. You're sending them down to Gehenna. So Amrlei, so who was talking over here? This was Rav Anan. Rav Anan says to Rav Nachman, Rav Nachman says to Rav Anan, Emily Izu. I don't know how to translate Izu, but I remember I looked it up once. It was like indeed or something. Tell me indeed. Gufad, no, Izu was meant my friend. Tell me Izu, my friend. Tell me, my friend. Gufa de Uve Hechahavi. You know the answer? You know what it is? Do you have the word my friend in there?
Say to me now. Say to me now.
Say to me now. Oh, you said it. So Izu is according to that now. Okay. Do you have in there my friend? No, go further. The next sentence. They explain the word Asa. They say my friend.
It says tell me now.
Translate Asa as now is based on Rashbam to Genesis 27. Marshall suggests the translation as friend. Funny the expression. Tell me, my friend. Yeah, but I remember we had this somewhere else. Gufa de Hechavi. Tell me the exact story. He doesn't trust that Shmuel actually said this, that you can lend money from orphans as interest. He doesn't trust that that's the case. He says you must have seen a story and you understood from that incident, like that's what he holds. Amar Le, he says, who did the bnei mar ukva dahavi mar Shmuel? There's like a big pot, maybe a kettle or something, that belonged to the children of Mar Ukva, that was in the house of Shmuel. Takil v'yavle, takil v'shakle. He would rent it out, I guess, and he would weigh it before it went rented out, and he would weigh it when it came back. Shagel agra v'shakle pachta. If after oiling it up, it wears away at the material. So he would take the rental fee, and he would also take the depreciation, which is a type of interest. See, when it comes to orphans, you're allowed to take interest. That's his proof. So Amalei, Rav Nachman says to him, nami shari lemevad. Even bearded people you can do that with, which means not only orphan children. Because they're accepting on themselves to pay for the wear and tear of the kettle. Which means like this. That there's two types of depreciation, he's saying. There's a depreciation that every time you use it, you rub away some metal. Some gets rubbed off. Another type is depreciation is that the metal that's left gets a little weaker from the heat. So, because one of them is covered by the rental fee. But then there's also what you want to pay for what's removed, the weight. So he weighs it, and that's what they pay. And then the rental fee covers the fact that it got worth that it's the metal that's left is less. It's weaker. It's the missing metal, additional payment, because it goes by weight. As it burns, as the metal burns, it gets worth less Okay. Amar Rabba bar Shila Amar Rav Chisda Amar Rabba bar Yosef bar Chama Amar Rav Sheshes. I didn't know. I thought Rabbi Yosef bar Chama was Rabba's father. And if that's the case, then there's another son, Rabba. Anyway, it says the name of Rav Sheshes. Money from orphans, you're allowed to lend it out. Karev l'schar, that where there's going to be, you see, when you invest, you can invest with high risk or low risk, whatever. But there's really no such thing as investing with no risk. Yeah, there is like CD accounts, like those types of things. You only get interest. But here, that's so. That's already determined. That's risk because that's made up beforehand how much interest you're going to get. But if it's an investment where you don't know, so then there's always some sort of risk that maybe it's going to be a loss, maybe it's going to be a profit. But then there's a question of how close it is. So the rabbis decreed that any investment that the odds of the loss are close to nothing, and there's only odds of gaining, of profit, that's considered interest. So, but for orphans, that's acceptable. They didn't put the decree on that. In other words, not that it's karev l'schar rachik lehefsid. It's close to profit, but far from a loss. That's what they always claim to you when they tell you to invest. Oh, yeah, for sure. Oh, yeah. Okay, so Taner Rabbanan, we start in the Brisa. Karev l'schar rachik lehefsid. Someone that does these types of investments, it's like he's only gaining, but there's no loss. That's a Russia. Wicked, very good. Karev lehefsid rachik l'schar is close to a loss, but far from a gain. That's a chassid. I think this is a little. This is making fun of the Hasidim. No, what he means is that he stays far away from that type of case. He stays far away from a scenario where it's close to from the other case. That's what I mean. Yeah, from far from this doesn't mean that he's always going to lose money. But the average, a fair risk, that's what everyone does. Amalei Rabba Rav Yosef, Rabba says to Rav Yosef, what do you do with money from orphans? We put it in the best, and then we give him a coin every time he needs a coin. You're chipping away at the principal. Pretty soon there's going to be nothing left. So he says, so what do you do? We find someone that has money that we know that it's his, that wasn't given to him on a loan. We have to find a trusted, wealthy person. How do you know that? Just because he's driving a fancy car does not mean that he's wealthy. It could be that he's more in debt than everyone else, right? And that's why. Right? Because he bought the car, because he has payments on the car. So here we're looking for someone that has wealth that he actually owns. So how do we do that? We find someone that has pieces of gold. Little pieces of gold don't have any simon on it. No one would ever lend that to deposit that with someone else because they won't be able to prove it to get it back. So they find someone that has this gold, which means that it's actually his. They buy it from him, and then they give it back to him. Now this is does the Gemara mean that the price of gold is going to go up? Is that what it means? That it's karev l'schar? It's closer to profit than to a loss. But what is the profit going to be? Is the profit going to be the gold, the price of gold? not saying what the profit's going to be. We're just saying why it's secure. But we know that this person actually owns his money, but we're not saying where he's going to make the money off. It doesn't say. Okay, so Aval davar masuyim loy, but they won't do this with any other item. Could be, but they're actually buying with something that didn't really belong to him, and then it's just going to get taken away by the real owner. So that wouldn't be good. Amar Ravashi says, "Tenach gaver dis beidava pricha." That's good if you can find someone that has these gold little pieces. If you don't have this, then you're just going to eat away at the principal. And like that case, what they were doing, they were putting it in court and just giving them money as it. Ravashi says, "Chazin gavra demashvu nechshe." We see someone that his property is quiet. It means there's not a lot of court cases. Umeheman, he's a trusted person. Shamadina deiraisa, he keeps the Torah laws. Lemekabel shamta derabanan, he was never put in cherem. He's not running away from court thing. And we give it in front of him. We give it to him to I guess to invest. We give it to him to invest, and then that's going to be closer to profit and more secure. Okay.
So those are that's a list of how the Beis Din invests the money. It finds a person with these qualities and gives it to him.
Right.
It sounds like, therefore, he could lose the money of the orphans too. And I say that because if he's guaranteeing not to lose, you don't have to go through all these qualifications, it seems to me.
Yeah, but we were saying that for orphans, you're able to do karev l'schar, rachik mehefsid.
Oh, so they share in the profit, but don't share in the losses.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just a very safe investment, right? That's what it means, karev l'schar.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
It's usually rabbinic. Okay. In Mekabel Tzim Baras Hilton Yisrael, we learned this Mishnah earlier. It was quoted that you can't accept iron sheep from a Jew because what that would mean is that you have to give back the original value plus the profit that you make. That would be a case of borrowing and then with the interest. But you're allowed to do this from a non-Jew. Beloved Mehem, you can borrow from them a malvanite and beribis, and you can also lend them with interest. We're talking about a non-Jew, because the same thing applies to a resident alien, not an alien, someone this is a Noahide, right? So he lives in Israel. He doesn't worship idols, but he didn't convert. Malva Yisrael Ma'isav Shalakim Midas Akam. A Jewish person is allowed to lend out a non-Jew's money. Avalei Midas Yisrael, but on interest. He's allowed to lend on interest, but not Midas Yisrael. We'll have to see in the Gemara what that means. Oh, really? Interesting. Lememra, the B'shusa de Mekabel Kaima, you see what we're understanding over here is that the difference between a rental and a loan is that who owns those, let's say you borrow money, borrow coins. Who owns those coins? The borrower or the lender? Those coins are owned by the borrower. It's just a debt that he has to the lender. If someone loses those coins, the borrower lost his own money. and the debt doesn't change. It's not like I lost the right. If it's a rental, it's the opposite. The item still belongs to the owner, not to the renter. So now, what we're saying here is that the fact that we can't take interest, the fact that we're calling this interest, Tzayin Barzel, we're saying that it actually belongs to the borrower. And that's why it's interest. Because that's why it's interest. Because when you pay it back, you're paying back more. And not that it's the person's, it's not a deposit, it's still the person's item.
The borrower is fully responsible.
Fully responsible, saying that it's in his possession. The problem is, if you take these sheep from a non-Jew, now who owns those sheep? If you say the Jew owns the sheep, he's the one that's borrowing and not borrowing, he's renting them, or let's say, and he's the owner, then they're chayav for the firstborns. If it's the non-Jews, then they're pater. We say over here that they're pater, which means that it's not really his, it means it really belongs to the other one. It's really a rental. It's not a loan, it's not a Abaya says like kasha. That's not a question. It depends. If you're accepting on yourself all the damages, then sorry, you have to say if the owner accepting the damages and the depreciation, then it still belongs to him. But if the owner doesn't accept and the renter accepts it, then it belongs to him. Amalei Rava says to Abaye, if the owner is accepting all the damages and the depreciation, Saint Barsel Karsle, you call that Saint Barsel? That's not Saint Barsel. Saint Barsel means that the renter accepts all of the depreciation to be responsible for that. So you got the wrong. It can't be. It's a square circle. You can't. Then also, Adatani Seifa. If you go further in the Mishnah, it says Abam Kablan Saint Barsel Menakim. You're allowed to accept it from a non-Jew. The Gemara says if you have two types of tzayin barsel, one that's not ribbis, one that is ribbis. So liflik b'didei. Why don't you just divide it up with the Jew? You say when are you not allowed to like kibul allowance v'zula? That's if the owner did not accept on himself the responsibility. But if the owner did accept, then it would be acceptable to do it. So why don't we just divide the first case instead of bringing another case about a non-Jew? Elam Rava has a different teretz to this contradiction between b'chayris and interest. The interest, we said, it's considered in the hands of the renter, it belongs to him, and by b'chayris we said it's in the hands of the original owner, the non-Jews. So how does that work? We're talking about Tzayin Barsel, and the owner does not hold on to the responsibility. It's all the responsibility of the renter. When it came to firstborn, the blood is the reason why the offspring are exempt from the laws of firstborn, which would be a sacrifice. Because if he doesn't give the money, then the non-Jew is going to come and confiscate the animal. If he doesn't find the mother animal, it's going to take the offspring. Because he still has a handle in it, so he's still considered a partner. And the rule is, if the non-Jew is a partner in this, here is sort of like a lien that he has on it, that already exempts him exempts the animals from the firstborn. So that's the reason why, but that's not enough of a reason to say that it's not interest. Okay. Now we get a little bit of a respite from the Mar B'Hainei B'Neshech B'Tarbis, someone that increases his possessions because of interest. L'chein Dalam Yikpitzenu, it's gathered for someone that has compassion on the poor. My l'chein Dalam, who's someone that has compassion on the poor? Amarav K'gein Shvar Malka. For example, Shvar Malka. So the pasuk says that someone that takes money on interest, it's going to go to another person. All the profits that you get are going to end up in someone else's hands. Who's that? Who else? Whose hands is it going to go to? Someone that has compassion on the poor. Shvar Malka was a Persian king that he would take tax and he would give it to the poor, to Yeah. But it says, why are they poor? Because they're poor from mitzvahs. Amar Rav Nachman says, Amar li Huna. I didn't realize he was so close. He calls him Huna. Rav Nachman says he was, I guess, a student of Shmuel as well. Rav Nachman. He calls him Huna. Huna told me, when that pasuk says that a person that takes money on interest is going to lose all his money, it's going to go to someone else. That's talking about he took money on interest from non-Jews. I thought this was allowed. It says to the non-Jew, you take interest. My sashech, lav toshech doesn't mean that you take it. It says loy sashech, loy, no, sashech, you pay it. Where it says, loy sagi de lav hachi, I'm not allowed to take a loan without paying interest to a non-Jew. Where it says, lafuke achicha. What it means is to exclude your brother. Deloy, that your brother you're not allowed to pay interest. Achicha is the Gemara says 1 second. Achicha behedik sivbei. When it comes to your brother paying interest, it says clearly that you're not allowed to sashech, if you want to translate it other way, you're not allowed to pay. We always translate you're not allowed to take, right? The Gemara answers lavar alav basei v'leisasei. It's coming to tell you that there's two prohibitions here. One is the neglect of a positive, and one is the negative. And the negative is your brother, you should not pay interest. Yeah. If you pay your brother interest, then you're violating the lesashech, the negative, and you're violating that you pay to the non-Jew. From the non-Jew, I was able to derive that you're not allowed to do that to a Jew. The Gemara has a question. Basically, what we just learned over here is that you're not allowed to take interest from a non-Jew, and someone that does loses his money. There's a question. You borrow from them, and you can also lend them with interest. You're allowed to. There's a special heter. You're allowed to take interest from a non-Jew, but only up until you need for your sustenance. After that, we don't allow you to do that. Rabbinically, it's not allowed. Why? Rashi says because he may come to learn from their. The Gemara is going to say later. May come to learn from their ways. Okay, Ravina says, Hacha b'talmid chamaskinan. Here we're dealing with talmid chachamim. What's the reason why the rabbis made a decree not to lend lend money with interest to a non-Jew? Maybe you'll learn from his actions. Because he's a talmid chacham, he won't learn from his actions. Yeah, the reason why the place can say that today you're allowed to take interest is because back then the communities were self-sufficient. The Jews made money amongst Jews. They had separate communities where how the businesses worked. So there would be one guy that would be lending on interest. He'd be the only guy that was doing business with the non-Jew. He would learn from his actions. The other communities were held like ghetto, like. But today, where all our money is made from non-Jews, and this, it doesn't matter if it's interest or non-interest. So this law was relaxed. That, you're going to be involved with the non-Jew on a daily basis with everything. Okay, Ika demasni la laha de Rav Huna. Some taught it on what Rav Huna said. Ika demasni laha de Rav Huna, ahad de tani Rav Yosef. Some said that what Rav Huna said was actually taught on what Rav Yosef said. And Rav Huna said that this is even for a non-Jew, right? If money, or I think Rashi says it's supposed to be read when you lend your brother money, when you lend your nation money, the poor is with you. Ami v'nachri. The nation or a non-Jew who gets the loan, and obviously the non-Jew, you would be getting interest. The nation is without interest. So you have $100, you can either lend it and get profit, or you can lend it in a gemach. It says ami kaidim, lend it in the gemach. You lend it to the person, a free loan. Ani v'asher. If you have a poor person and a wealthy person, who do you lend it first to? Ani kaidim. You lend it first to the poor person. No, the wealthy person, you'll probably get the money back. the poor person, right? They say, don't lend money to a friend, you might lose them both. But
Don't bite about it.
so, but nevertheless, the halacha is that you lend to the poor. And aniyecha vani ercha, aniyecha means family people that need money, or people from the city. Aniyecha kaidman, your family comes first. Ani yercha vani erecheres, people from your city or from another city. Ani yercha kaidman. There's whole discussion about it. Eretz Yisrael applies that has precedence over your own city. That's like I'll discuss it. But whatever the case is, your city comes first. Amar ma, I mean, it's both in Eretz Yisrael. Amar ma, the master taught, Ami v'nachri, Ami kaidem. Your nation comes first. Your nation comes first. Pshita, that's obvious. This is where Rav Huna said that even for that for the non-Jew you're getting interest, and for the Jew you're giving the free loan. Nevertheless, you're supposed to lend to the Jew. Tanya was taught in a brisa. Rabbi Yossi says, take a look how blind the people are that lend ribbis. Adam Russia. If you would call your friend wicked, call him a nickname. Hey, Russia. So Yeredi Malachayev, the guy would come and destroy your life. He would come back with vengeance. As Rashi has another pshat, that he would open up a business next to yours and destroy your business. So he doesn't accept it though. But when it comes to those that lend with interest, they bring witnesses. Lavlar is the scribe, the kolmas, the pen, the ink, the kaisvin, they write, the chaismin, and they sign plain as Israel, that this person is denying the God of Israel. Basically, someone that lends with interest is denying Hashem. And so basically, he's doing all of this. He's basically calling himself a Rasha, and it doesn't bother him. Tanya Reb Shimon ben Elazar Reb Shimon ben Elazar says, anyone that has money and lends them without interest, Allah the pasuk says regarding him, his money doesn't give with interest, and he doesn't take bribes about the innocent. Someone that does this will never fall. In English, never falter. Is that the word? I think that's the word that they use. Collapse. Never won't collapse. But this teaches us that anyone that does lend with interest, his possessions do collapse. We see a bunch of people that don't lend money on interest, and nevertheless their possessions collapse. Rabbi Lazar says, that's just temporary. They have ups and downs. But those that lend with interest, they collapse and they never get back up. Why do you see the rebellious ones, tachris, and you remain silent? Kabbalah, Russia, tzadik mimena, when the wicked swallows the one that's more righteous than he is. Amar Rav Huna says, tzadik mimena beileya, a wicked is possible, the wicked person is possible to swallow someone that's more righteous than him. It's all relative. Tzadik Amar ain't a beileya, but he can't swallow someone that's a tzadik Amar, which is referring to the one that doesn't lend with interest. He doesn't get swallowed up. Tanya. Okay. Let's leave it by Tanya.
On the question, on the top of the previous page, the first Tosfos, the one that starts Ein Makablin,
Yeah.
it says Pirush Bekuntras. What does Kuntras refer to?
That was gonna be my question.
Kuntras refers to Rashi, that his original commentary was written in pamphlets.
In what?
In pamphlets. In
Aha,
Kuntras.
okay.
So Tosfos usually refers to Rashi as Kuntras.
Okay, thank you.
That's how it was spread around originally. The Rashi's commentary was on pamphlets.
I only asked the question because I knew Yitzi was about to.
Oh.